Rishikas. Who are the ancient women in Vedas known as Rishikas? And what are the verses in Vedic scriptures which allow women to read the Vedas? Now, in the field of education, there has been a misconception that traditionally from ancient times, women in India were not given the right to education, and it has just started changing now. However, if we look at the details from ancient times to medieval times and to the current modern times, the reality is quite to the contrary. Significant contribution of women rishis who are addressed as Rishikas have gone ignored for an exceptionally long time. The oldest literature of the world is the Vedas, composed over many millennia ago and last recompiled 5,100 years ago by the banks of the river Saraswati. One must understand Rishikas are not as same as the Rishikanyas. Rishikanyas are daughters of Rishis and Rishikas. That's different to Rishikas. The Vedas are not only a male preserve. About 24 to 36 of the Vedic Rishikas had composed some of the Vedic verses. Their names as authors of respective verses can be traced back to the Vedas, and they are specifically mentioned in various Vedic texts. Some of the names of the Rishikas are Aditi, Brahati, Agnya, Chandra, Devkam, Devi, Dhruva, Havya, Jyota, Kamya, Shama, Mahi, Meena, Nari, Purandehi, Ranta, Ratavri, Sanjaya, Saraswati, Simhi, Shiv, Stri, Subhag, Sushiva, Suvarja, Suyavam, Shoni. Just because there are more mentions of rishis than Rishikas, it is not to conclude that the contribution of this Rishikas in the making of the Vedas were any less significant. The truth is quite the contrary. Significant contribution of women rishis have been ignored. Now, it is true that Vedic scriptures do not force anyone to engage above and beyond their capacities and wishes. Therefore, in Vedic civilization, a woman may choose simply to dedicate herself to family, children, husband, home, and concern herself about her own physical appearance without being forced to engage in other activities. But that does not create a limitation, an obligation, or a priority. Women are allowed to read the Vedas. They were also allowed to write the Vedas. According to Dharma Sutra of Maitrayani, school of Yajurveda, women can be classified in two types: Dvivedastriya, Brahmavardiniya, Sadyovadas, cha tatra, etc. The first type of women mentioned in this Dharma Sutra is the category of the Brahmavadinis, those who choose to dedicate their lives to the study, practice, and teaching of Vedic knowledge and Brahman realization. These transcendental and powerful women are not required to marry and raise children, although there is no rule that forbids them to do so even later in life. Tradition offers the examples of Vishwar, Sikate, Nivari, Apla, Vishwavar from the family of Aitri, Angirasi, Saraswati, and many others who are associated with the mantras of Rigveda. Another famous Brahmavadini is Lop Mudra, who was famous for her deep knowledge of Sanskrit and Tamil. The meaning of her name is completely absorbed in the sound, and she falls under the category of Brahmavadini Rishipatni because she became the wife of Agastya Rishi. The two mantras of Rigveda are attributed to her. Some scholars name the literary work from their wives or daughters, as in the case of Vedanta commentary, Bhamati, and the mathematics treatise called Lilavati. Such texts have been found, written or composed by the women whose names they bear. However, there is no specific documentation for the authorship. The Rigveda Suktas are explicitly feminine in origin. The book 14 of Atharveda and various sections in several more books are attributed to Rishikas, or otherwise known as female rishis. The Vaksut, meaning the Rigveda 10.1-5, focusing on the very revelation of the Vedas, is attributed to Rishika Vagamrina. The entire book of Atharveda concerning domestic rituals, marriage, is attributed to a Rishika. Many parts of the other 19 books are attributed to women, and the rituals described are specifically called Stri Karmani, ceremonies specifically celebrated by women. The ritual texts of the Vedas offer a list of Rishikas to whom the student must offer his homage during the learning of the divine texts. The Ashwalayan Gruya Sutra and the Shankhayan Gruya Sutra list female Vedic gurus as Sulabh Maitreya and Madhav Pratite. Some Vedic texts present women as authorities on details of the Vedic rituals. Aitreya Brahman 2.9 quotes the opinion of Kumari Gandharv Grihita on the ritual of Agnihotra, the daily celebration of the fire sacrifice, that is the homes, the Agnihotra. Some texts are specifically destined to be recited by women, like the mantras of Madhyandina Yajurveda. Many mantras from the Yajurveda are recited by the Rishikas. Even when men recited the other shlokas, The presence of women was also implicit. The recitation of Samved is intended to be accompanied by the music of the instruments played by women. Now in the Upanishad, an example, Kena Upanishad, Umma Brahma Vidya appears to dissipate Indra's ignorance with her teachings. Apparently, Adi Shankara saw this discourse as very important, and he wrote no less than 2 different and subsequent commentaries on this text. The girls called Brahmavadini underwent the vows of Brahmacharya and the Upnayan Sanskar just like boys, beginning the performance of Agnihotra, which is the daily fire sacrifice, and the Ved Adhyan, daily study of Vedic scriptures, at a very young age. The only difference that due to their generally more delicate physical structures, girls were not required to observe the strict rules of austerities prescribed for the males. Therefore, they were allowed to spend their brahmacharya period in the home of their own father or in the home of other relatives, receiving a private tuition and obtaining their viksha, the ritual alms, from the family members rather than strangers. This is also confirmed in another text by other commentators and writers with the title of Yam Dharma Shastra. It is important such provision did not constitute a limitation or obligation or a strict rule. By Apisali, a illustrious grammarian before Panini, in his Mahabhashya, Patanjali mentions a school where female students learn Mimamsa philosophy and make a distinction between beginner and advanced students, respectively defined by the terms Adhyatri and Manvika. Patanjali 4.193 and 2.249. The Brahmavadinis choose to marry, look for men who were equally dedicated to the cultivation of spiritual knowledge and practice. Some famous Rishi Patnis, respected and famous at least as much as their husbands, were Romasa, the wife of Swanya, Ansuya, the wife of Aitri, Maitreya, the wife of Yagnavalkya, Arundhati, the wife of Vashishtha, Vashukra Patni, Ghosh. And just like the men, these Brahmavadinis had the opportunity to go through the traditional ashrams in human life up to the level and order of total renunciation or sannyas. It is also said Gargi attained the perfect realization in the stage of Brahmacharya. Chudal in the Grihastha ashram, Maitreya in the stage of Vanasprat, and Sulabh Yogini as a sannyasini. The Sulabh Bhikshuni, sacred mendicant, was famous for her vast and deep knowledge of the Mahabharata. It's very strange when people without knowledge mention or ask the question, why are women not allowed to read the Vedas in ancient time? But the further you go back into the ancient time, the more women were respected in the Vedic culture. There are so many Rishikas, and it's the contribution the women in making of the Vedas. The primary reason Rishikas are revered, but so little known, is owing to their extreme humility, humbleness. Most Rishikas are known owing to the accounts of rishis and yogis. In the Shanti Parva chapter of Rishi Vyasa's Mahabharata, Bhishma Pitama recollects stories of various Rishikas to Yudhishthira while answering many interesting questions. In the Vedic era, knowledge was transmitted through Guru Shishya Parampara, Preceptor, Preceptee tradition. And every Vedic text recognized Matru or Mother as the Adi Guru or the first preceptor. The first Guru is definitely a mother. This is not just a figure of speech, but a reality. At the time when education was an integral part of life, children were prepared for a life of knowledge and wisdom during the pregnancy itself, the Garbha Samskar. Vedic women were always literate. They were primary custodians of essential knowledge. Yajurveda clearly states, Vedas are for all human beings. It says, I do hereby address Vedas for the benefit of humanity. Madhav Samhita or Parashar Smriti says, she who studies the Vedas after Upnayan and gets married is a Brahmavadini. She who gets married immediately after Upnayan and then studies Vedas is a Sadyavadu. There is a clear mention in the Mahabhashya about women being Pandita in the scriptures. It is also mentioned in the Mahabhashya. The Itihas, the Ramayana in the Ayodhya Kanda talks about Rani Kaushalya, who used to perform Agnihotra. Always engaged in the observance of vows, Kaushalya, clad in silk clothes, was performing rituals of auspiciousness, offering oblations to the fire god Agni Devta in accordance with the Vedic mantras. Spiritually high-minded Mother Kaushalya, her anguish subdued, performed the sipping rite, Achman, and herself, rendered pure, performed auspicious ceremonies for Sri Ram. Mata Sita's Sandhyavadana. Hanumanji went to Ashoka garden looking for Sita in Lanka, but he did not find Sita. Hanuman saw a holy water river there. Hanumanji was sure that if Sita would be there, she would definitely come here to offer her Sandhya Vandana. The next text says, surely that lady of lovely complexion, the beautiful Janaki, will come to this river, flowing with sacred waters for performing the evening rituals. Also in the Mahabharata, the description of a Brahmani named Shiv said Srimati Shrutavati. They're all found the study of Vedic knowledge. to Yagnopavitam, Sanskar, and Ved Adhayan. There is not a single reference which denies the women this rights, a myth that women did not have right to education. In ancient India,